Liverpool, and she met Hitler at the station. She was very concerned about him because he was very confused, almost rambling, and he had come to visit her, not directly from the coast, but having been the guest of the Tavistock Institute in London. Now, this information that I'm putting forward, I personally still need to see the detail of it, but the weight of opinion of those who have followed the history of Hitler and how he became established are adamant that part of his early training was in London at the Tavistock Institute.
Who specifically runs the Tavistock group? Is this the international banksters, the Rothschilds, the Rockefellers, those who want to Frankenize the world?
Well, this is where life starts to get shades of grey. We know that the Tavistock Institute is consuming huge amounts of money, and from its early days it was given large grants from obviously extremely wealthy people. We know that the Rothschilds and the Rockefellers put money into the system. In particular, Mr. Rockefeller added American money to build up the American Institute of Psychiatry, and that was later to create the Kaiser Wilhelm Institute of Psychiatry in Germany, which was the main institute which began to get involved in those T4 programs, the eugenics for the disabled and the mentally disabled. So the Tavistock Institute, there's a lot of history which we know, but there's also a lot of things we don't know about the detail of the men who put the money into that institute. So in the background we can see events that happened. We don't know the exact people who were driving them, we don't know the exact people who wrote the checks, but we know the Tavistock Institute exists, and we can see in great detail how it has helped promote an agenda to do with the psychiatric industry and also the social industry.
Well, is not the British Constitution Group going to initiate some studies into those areas so we can, or you can, identify the enemy within, and we can be specifically pointing out how they have committed these crimes against humanity and what they intend to do insofar as reducing the population not only of this island but of the world?
Well, we've already started to do this, and across the country now, we will say we, but they're people working independently. There are researchers who are looking into the background of politicians who are currently in power. And when we do this, we find that, for example, in Tony Blair's New Labour Party, we are dealing with key people whose backgrounds are clearly linked to communism and Marxism. And these individuals, whether it's the Miliband brothers or it's Peter Mandelson, who have huge power and influence in Britain, but if you look at their background, it comes from a Marxist. The same is true of Mr. Gordon Brown. In his own biography, it's clearly stated that he was put into power with the help of Scottish communists. So we see the Marxist theme right the way through the New Labour project, and then in the wings we have the Conservative Party. And if we start to look at the Conservative Party, it's no coincidence that now we're back into looking at connections with the Nazi Party.
No, we have then a one-party system, so the people in control operate from both ends of the political spectrum, or the illusionary political spectrum, with the strings going up to the Rothschilds and the Rockefellers and the
bankers.
Well, that is the banksters. Is it not?
Absolutely. So we have had a political system that even before the Second World War was offering two alternatives, and those alternatives were totally controlled. Many people are now talking about the Lib Lab Con in UK, and that is taking that is joking about the state of the parties, the Liberal Democrats, Labour, Lib Lab, and the con is the Conservatives. So many of the people are conned by this regime, but I'm pleased to say that really over the last year in particular, we're now seeing people that look at the leaders of the three main parties, and they realise they've come out of the same mould. If you look at Clegg from the Lib Dems, or you look at Tony Blair as our previous Prime Minister, or you look at the new boy in the Tories, Cameron, not only do they look the same, they use the same sound bites, they use the same hand movements, and there is a reason for this, and that is because they've actually been trained by exactly the same people. And this is not difficult to uncover, because if we have a look at an organisation with a Marxist background, and that is Demos, a so-called think tank in the UK, which helped set up the New Labour project.
Now Cameron, did he not promise to have a referendum and then said, well, there is to be no referendum, we're simply going to declare the abolition of British sovereignty? And he has not only not allowed the British to vote on their own sovereignty, he has jammed it down their throat and up their ass.
Well, he said repeatedly, he was reported and quoted in the newspapers as saying that he would give the nation a vote on whether we wanted to be involved with Europe, a referendum, and yesterday it became very clear that he has reneged on that promise. He's lied, just as Tony Blair lied, just as the Liberal Democrat Party lies, because all three of them are committed to locking us into the EU project.
I didn't quite hear you. Did you say that they lied?
They lied.
Then they have a legacy of lies, is that not true?
They have a complete legacy of lies, because they have repeatedly told the general public that we shouldn't worry about this, it won't take sovereignty away, when in actual fact they were giving sovereignty away at each stage.
Prime Minister Ted Heath, who initiated the original schematic laid out by Adolf Hitler to surrender the sovereignty of this nation, is buried over at Salisbury Cathedral. He told us that this was just to set up a trade agreement initially, and then he lied and the people believed him, and then they were betrayed, and this betrayal has gone from Heath all the way on down to now, where Cameron has said, well, you don't have a right to vote on your own sovereignty. You are no longer free.
We've been lied to all along, and each time we dig back into the evidence, the documentary evidence of history, we can see that there are connections between people in power and the Nazi Party.
Well, wasn't the Astors supported by the Nazi Party, or somehow linked?
Well, they were extremely supportive of the Nazi movement, both through Oswald Mosley, who was the leader of the British fascist movement. I believe I'm correct in saying that his signature appears in the Astor family guest book, and the Astor family continued their links with Oswald Mosley after the war period, and the Astor family is also linked through to the German ambassador to the UK immediately pre-Second World War, and that was von Ribbentrop. So it seems a big coincidence that we have one of the major families who helped get Mr. Cameron into leadership of the Conservative Party. I believe they gave him about £2.4 million for his leadership campaign. So that family, with links through to the fascist movement, has now helped to support the leader of the Conservative Party.
But he's supposed to be exactly the opposite of the fascist, and yet he is the personification of just what he professes to be against.
Well, this is the art of the underlying Marxist doctrine, which is to lie. If you tell a big enough lie long enough, it will deceive the wider public, and that was one of the known doctrines of the Nazi propaganda movement.
Cameron is being groomed to be the next Prime Minister, is he not?
he's been groomed to be the next Prime Minister ever since he took leadership